But whatever Dan Reeves did after that 85 season worked because they showed up in the 1986 Super Bowl, Super Bowl 21, but it was against arguably one of the best teams in NFL history in the New York Giants. They had Phil Simms, they had Lawrence Taylor, Mark Bavaro. Things started well for the Denver Broncos. They had a first quarter 10-7 lead after John Elway scrambled for 7 yards. He also scrambled on the first play of the game. I don't know who was calling the plays, Sandy. A play-action pass with Lawrence Taylor. I'd have been in my offensive coordinator's ear like, pick a different play. But things started well for the Broncos. What happened after that first quarter?
Well, actually, the second quarter wasn't bad either, but two key things happened in that second quarter. Rich Karlis missed a couple of short field goals, and the Broncos had a first-and-goal situation inside the Giant 5-yard line. And they tried to play smash mouth and overpower the Giants. It did not work, and the missed field goals added injury to insult. And even though after the Giants recorded a safety late in the second quarter, the Broncos were still ahead 10-9 at halftime. And I remember Pat Bowlen, the late Pat Bowlen, coming into our KOA broadcast booth at halftime to do an interview. And as he was leaving, Billy Thompson and I, who were doing pregame and, in my case, postgame duty as well, chatted with Bowlen on the way out. And I'll never forget this. He said, we have no chance in this game. His team's ahead 10-9, but he realized they had blown those two scoring opportunities, the one in particular on the Giant goal line, and that the Giants would overwhelm them in the second half. They needed a much bigger lead to withstand the Giants, who are a great second-half team throughout that season.
Sometimes you lose the game in the second quarter because you don't capitalize, and momentum is a real thing. It gives strength, production to your opponents, and that's what the Broncos did going into that halftime. And then what they call Elway's rookie mistake. Now, again, Elway was not a rookie at this point, but Elway's rookie mistake happened on a 3rd and 12 from the own 11. He got sacked by George Martin. Was that the beginning of the end, Sandy, for fans watching this game? At that moment, did you know the Broncos are not – it's not looking good for the Broncos to win this one?
Well, armed with what Pat Bowlen had told me, and growing up following the Giants, and even that year tracking their progress very closely, I had a pretty good sense that one way or the other, the game was getting away from them. The Giant pass rush was beginning to come on. The Denver offensive line was weakening. And as you'll remember, Phil Simms finished the game 23 for 25. So when the Giants had the ball, even in the first half, though, they only scored the one touchdown, added a safety, of course, toward the end of the first half. But they were completing every pass. They were really doing almost anything they wanted to do. And to me, the turning point of the game came early in the third quarter when the Giants had the ball, and they had a propensity to go for it on 4th down. They'd line up in punt formation, but Jeff Rutledge, the backup quarterback, would move into the quarterback position. And I think it shouldn't have caught the Broncos off guard, but it did. The Giants were able to convert 4th and short for a first down. And after that, the floodgates opened, and the Giants scored seemingly at will for the rest of the game. It wasn't as embarrassing as subsequent Super Bowls would turn out to be from the Broncos' point of view, because the Giants had done that to everyone that year in the playoffs, including a 49-3 win over Joe Montana's San Francisco 49ers.
Well, a lot happened there, and the Broncos would ultimately give up 24 unanswered points. And yes, Sandy, the floodgates did actually open. The first recorded sighting of a coach taking a Gatorade bath. You also had Phil Simms say, "I'm going to Disneyland." So the New York Giants were doing everything you thought they would do. And the Broncos had to look at what happened and how they lost that game. What was the atmosphere like after that game for fans, for players, and for media members like yourself?
I was not in the Bronco locker room in the immediate aftermath, but I was at the post-game party back at the hotel. And I'm not saying you would have thought the Broncos had won the game, but there wasn't really much depression exhibited by players. The Broncos on that particular occasion were thrilled to get to the Super Bowl. Remember, that was the year of the drive game in Cleveland. And the Giants have been racking up big scores on just about every team they faced during the second half of the year, with the exception of the Broncos, who actually played a very competitive game against the Giants in the Meadowlands during the regular season that year. So there wasn't much in the way of head hanging. The Broncos had a feeling that turned out to be true, that they would be back to the Super Bowl in ensuing years and perhaps have a chance to go up against a team less formidable than the New York Giants. I also remember an incident on the bus the next morning on the way to the airport. The veteran Tom Jackson, who, as it turns out, had played his last game in Super Bowl 21. He's in the back of the bus. A few of us from the media go back there. We all know Tom pretty well at that point. And he's got a kind of a wry smile on his face because some of the receivers, Mark Jackson and Vance Johnson, are in the front of the bus, and they're seemingly pretty cheery. And I remember Tom Jackson, I'll never forget this, sitting there and saying, because it had been 9 years between Super Bowls for Tom Jackson, they have no idea how hard it is to get back to this game and win this game, but they will learn. Now, Jackson and Johnson did get back to the game in 2 of the next 3 years, as it turned out, but they never won a Super Bowl as Denver Broncos either.
As a part of this episode, we had the chance to speak to the legend, Karl Mecklenburg. Here's Karl.
The next year happens, and especially when you're playing in the Super Bowl. I played in each of the 3 Super Bowl losses. I went directly to Hawaii to play in the Pro Bowl. So I had another chance to play football, which was very cathartic for me. And then you come back and a month later, everybody's talking about the draft. People have retired. People have been traded. Coaches have been sniped by other teams. It's a different team. It's a different year. And off you go. And from a losing standpoint, that's nice. From a winning standpoint, I think it's kind of confusing. In talking to some of the guys who have won Super Bowls, they're like, "Well, wait a second, why are they talking about next year? We just won, right?" So yeah, it's a strange thing. I think Dan just dove right into how can we get better. I call it a sports mentality. You're honest and forgiving with yourself. You look at the situation, you figure out what went wrong, you fix that. You figure out what went right last year, and you repeat that. And that was an approach that I saw out of Dan over and over and over again. And yeah, that's what happened.